The Cardinals took Paris Johnson Jr. as the first offensive lineman off the board in 2023, and he had a really promising rookie season. I think if they had to make it again, they'd make the exact same pick. There were some growing pains. He gave up 8 sacks as a rookie, but I think immediately he showed the athletic traits and movement skills that made him a top 10 pick, and as the season progressed, he really improved from a technical standpoint. These are his stats from the 2023 season. Like every single rookie offensive lineman, he's below average in most metrics, but I think he really improved and got more consistent down the stretch. Looking at his PFF grades from each half of the season, over the first half of the year, he had a 50.1 PFF grade. Over the second half, he had a 70.7 PFF grade. That's a 20.6 improvement, which is the third highest of any offensive lineman from last year. And as we'll get into, he cleaned up a lot of the technical things that gave him problems early, and I think he's primed to develop into a top tier offensive tackle. So the first thing that stands out from Paris Johnson Jr.'s tape, and the reason that he was the first offensive lineman drafted, is his foot speed and pocket range. He's light on his feet, he gets easy depth in his pass sets, he can mirror speed rushers up the arc without having to open his hips prematurely and turn and chase them upfield. Unless you're able to actually defeat his hands, like if you're just trying to outrun him around the corner, you're not going to have a lot of success. You see even on this play, he's a tick late off the snap, so DeMarcus Lawrence is able to get a step on him, but he's got that recovery range to open up and flush him out of the pocket. He had no problem protecting the edge in his matchup with TJ Watt. I know he played guard early at Ohio State, and there's been some talk about potentially moving him inside, but I think that would be a mistake. You can't teach his combination of size and range and pass protection. I think he's got a bright future on the outside. So the first element of pass protection, I feel really confident. He's got the foot speed to stay at offensive tackle. The second element, which is hand usage, I thought he struggled a little bit early, and he's still got some stuff to clean up, but the improvement that he showed down the stretch, I think should have you really optimistic. So he has extremely long arms for an offensive tackle, over 36 inches. Having that length is an advantage because it allows you to establish first contact more easily. It also allows you to land your punch when you're at a further distance away from the pass rusher, so you can keep a healthy amount of space, punch away from your frame, and then if you miss or the pass rusher beats your hands, you're still far enough away from them that you've got some breathing room to recover. But a lot of times tackles with longer arms are less precise with their hand placement and strike location. If you have longer limbs, you're just going to have less control over where your punch lands, and you'll actually see a lot of times these tackles with 36 plus inch arms, their hand usage is all over the place. So the actual accuracy of his punch is something that needs to improve. There's a lot of plays where he'll get his hands on the rusher's face mask. You see right here, he basically rips Jadeveon Clowney's helmet off. Even on some of the good reps we're going to discuss, the one issue is that he lands his punch on the face mask, which is going to draw penalties, but you also have a lot less control of the interaction than you would if you're getting your hands inside on the jersey. So he's a tackle that primarily punches with the outside hand, and early in the year that got him into a lot of trouble. This play against Zadarius Smith, he tries to outside hand strike through this cross chop. His hand gets chopped down and Smith gets a hit on the quarterback. Same thing here against Jadeveon Clowney. He sets it up with this inside step, cross chops the outside hand, wins the corner. This play from week 6, Michael Hoyt beats him with a cross chop. You see in all of these reps, when you're punching aggressively with the outside hand, if it gets chopped or swiped down, you don't have a lot of ways of recovering the corner. On this play, you see he at least has the recovery athleticism to maintain contact, flush him upfield, and save the sack, but it's a clean loss initially. So to start out the year, he was pretty solid in pass pro. It was just a few times a game someone would beat his outside hand and they'd get a sack or a pressure. But over the second half of the year, he got a lot more patient with his outside hand. He started flashing and baiting cross chops and swipes, and the result was that he got beat around the edge a lot less frequently. There were a ton of examples of this in the second Rams matchup specifically. Right here, Byron Young goes in for the cross chop. You can see Paris Johnson pull back his hands so the cross chop doesn't have anything to land on. Once he gets him to miss with that first move, then he comes in with a two-hand punch and locks him up. This play, he's initially going in for an outside hand strike. Once he sees Hoyt getting into this cross chop, he pulls it back. He is a little bit high with that replacement punch, and you'd like him to be more balanced at the top of his set so he doesn't open up the inside, but still really good hand usage here. And then a couple other examples of good hand strategy, but the placement just needs to be refined. Right here, he's going in for a cross chop. Good job by Paris Johnson of retreating with the outside hand, not giving him anything to latch onto. He's using this circle punch technique where it's kind of a rounded path with his outside arm so the cross chop can't land on anything. But again, that replacement punch is slightly too high. He ends up landing his hand on the rusher's helmet. Really good job here for the most part, just needs to get that strike point a little bit lower. This play, the rusher flashes the inside hand. Good job by Paris Johnson of not overextending and falling for the bait. Kind of a tough situation when the speed rusher's dipping low like this and leading with his helmet, but you do want hands on the jersey as much as possible. Nice play here against Hassan Reddick, again protecting the outside hand, landing his punch on the downswing of the rusher's move. I didn't chart his film or anything like this, but I felt like over the first half of the year, the cross chop was the move that gave him the most trouble, and then over the second half, it was probably the move that he had the highest success rate against. With his foot speed and pocket range, if he just makes the choice to not allow pass rushers to beat his outside hand, he's not going to get beat around the edge very often at all. With the really aggressive outside hand strikes, he's got the recovery ability to live with that strategy if he has to, but it's just gifting his opponents opportunities to beat him around the corner. I think the biggest thing he needs to improve in pass protection is his inside hand usage, and stick with me here, it's kind of a long point, but it really impacts so many different aspects of his game. So in most of his pass sets, he's got his inside hand pretty much fully extended. It's called a drag hand, and he's using that to feel out and anticipate stunts and twists. If you've got your inside hand extended, you can feel out the 3 technique when he starts to threaten the B gap. So theoretically, you're getting an earlier read on the stunt, but you've also already got your hand activated so you can collect that looper. But for Paris Johnson, this doesn't really have the intended effect, and it creates a lot of other issues. As far as actually picking up stunts, he's pretty much completely reliant on that hand to feel out the looper. He's kind of slow to read the play with his eyes. He doesn't seem to have great peripheral vision at this point to recognize the 3 technique looping upfield, and he also needs to do a better job of reading the rusher in front of him. If he starts to hesitate or stutter, he should be anticipating a stunt at that point, and his eyes need to flash inside. So it really seems like somebody just told him to stick up his inside drag hand and he'll have more success against stunts, because even though his arm is extended, his hand isn't really activated to engage with the block. But then the byproduct of having his initial hand placement so wide is that he's got to bring his hands a much further distance to get his hands inside and block a bull rush, for example. So you see this play against Seattle, he's got the drag hand extended initially. Once Derek Hall starts to engage and he knows it's just a one-on-one matchup, he needs to bring his hands a lot tighter so he can meet power with power and get his hands inside. But his frame is so exposed right now, Hall just goes speed to power, gets his hands inside, establishes first contact, and knocks him on his back. Another play here against Houston, again, the inside hand is initially hovering over the B gap, but then once the rusher starts to threaten upfield, he needs to tighten up his hands so he can give a firm 2-hand punch with his hands inside the shoulder pads. He's got a wide open chest, the rusher goes speed to power, and Paris Johnson has basically sacrificed all of his length advantage here. It's great to have long arms, but if your initial hand carriage is so wide like this, you're not really going to be able to establish first contact. So really every consistent issue that I see with Paris Johnson Jr. in pass pro starts with the inside hand pretty much being out of play early in the rep. If he can become less reliant on the drag hand to feel out stunts and use his eyes more to read the play, he's going to have tighter hand placement to start out the rep, and it's going to be a lot easier for him to deal with bull rushes and speed to power. And I do think this is more of a technical issue than a true limitation, because you see on reps where his inside hand is active and engaged, he's got a pretty good anchor. When he's able to clinch up bull rushes and get his hands inside, he had a pretty high success rate, and a lot of times he's even able to redirect that power and put them on the ground. And then final thing to discuss in pass protection is inside counters. I thought this was a mixed bag for Paris Johnson as a rookie. In terms of foot speed and slide quickness to mirror inside counters, I think he has everything that you look for in an offensive tackle. This is a great rep against Washington. You see him get into his 45-degree set. He pauses at the top of his set, but he's keeping his feet active. A lot of times tackles in this situation will plant their feet in the ground and then they aren't ready to mirror a counter inside. Once Montez Sweat attacks the B gap, he basically reverses his set. He does a good job of stepping back inside with his left foot instead of drop stepping and opening up the B gap. And then he's got his inside hand active and ready to seal off the pocket. And there were a handful of great reps on his tape dealing with inside counters. Good job here against Will Anderson. And then this rep against Bud Dupree, there's more of a drop step with the inside foot than you want to see, but he's still got a really strong inside hand, so he's able to seal off the B gap. But there were also some times he struggled with inside counters. Right here, Adafe Owe beats him with an inside spin. His inside hand punch here needs to be a lot lower, so it's less easy to hook as he spins. And then he doesn't do a good job mirroring the rush with his feet. And then this play against the Rams, again, he's a little bit late to react with his feet, and he's also kind of over-reliant on having that inside hand extended. Michael Hoyt's able to power through the left hand and get pressure on the quarterback. So I think Paris Johnson has a ton of upside as a pass protector. There aren't many tackles with his size and length that can move as gracefully and cover as much ground as he can. His hand usage when it comes to blocking speed rushes, I thought improved significantly as the season went on, but you want him to add some play strength, and I think the biggest thing is having his hands tighter initially so that he's ready to deal with power rushes. And I think he's going to be a player that adds a ton of value in the run game. I felt like he excelled in every phase. He had some really nice backside cutoffs as a rookie. This first one against the Steelers, he's blocking the 3-tech on the backside of wide zone. Good job by Will Hernandez initiating this combo block to give him an easier angle, and then Paris Johnson just torques him, pins him to the backside of the play. Next one against the Cowboys was really helped by Paris Johnson being first off the snap. This is one of those plays that I think looks like a false start, but technically isn't because it's still within the motion of the snap. But he gets his helmet across the midline of the 3-tech, seals off the play side shoulder, and then he's so strong with the backside hand to clear out this cutback lane. Jonathan Hankins is trying to redirect and backdoor the block, but he's got him sealed off, and James Conner has plenty of room to work with. He was really effective pulling and blocking linebackers and DBs at the second level. He gets a pancake here on Devin Bush on this toss play. Right here, they're running pin pull in the red zone against Dallas. He finishes Jaron Kearse to the sideline and then has a great celebration at the end of the play. One thing I appreciate about Paris Johnson Jr.'s tape is he's got the nasty finishing mentality, but he's also always celebrating at the end of the play when his teammate scores or something. This play, he just eliminates Adoree Jackson out in the alley on this jailbreak screen. It ends up getting called back for offensive pass interference on Michael Wilson, but really good block here. And then his length gives him the ability to connect and stay connected to second level blocks. Because he has such a wide reach and radius of impact, he can attach to a block, and then as they're trying to bounce around and redirect, he doesn't have to fully mirror them to sustain the block. He can stay attached as they're trying to escape from contact for a lot longer than most blockers can. And on down blocks and drive blocks, I thought he was also pretty solid. You want him to continue to add play strength, but he's got the explosive first step, so he can create some knockback on initial contact, and he does a great job sustaining blocks, creating displacement late in the rep, getting his hips through the block. I think the biggest thing to work on is playing with low pad level and creating a leverage advantage without leading with his head into contact. But compared to every other rookie offensive lineman I've watched, I think he had the fewest negative plays in the run game, very few losses on his tape. And as he gets stronger and a little bit more under control, I think those wins are going to become more frequent and more dominant. So overall, I think Paris Johnson passed the test of his rookie season. It wasn't a Tristan Wirfs, Rashawn Slater level rookie campaign, but he's still got the upside of those players. There's just some technical nuances he's got to iron out, and I think the growth that he showed from the first half to the second half of the season should be really encouraging and make you a lot more optimistic about his development going forward.